Hey, what's going on, guys? Alex here, and today I want to talk about 10 games that I played over the past year but didn't make a video of because, I don't know, there's many different reasons. One, maybe I was distracted by other games, or I just didn't find time for it. It's not that I don't have enough time to play the games, but I also generally don't have time to make videos for them because I typically have really high detailed videos, as you can tell, especially if you've watched my 15 to 20 minute videos out there. So I want to give each game the right exposure, but that's only in a perfect world where I have an army of video editors and a ton of money to spend, which I obviously don't have. So the best thing that I thought of was to compile them all in this one video so I can talk about them. Because these are the kind of games that I've teased you for the past few months, and it wouldn't be cool if I didn't say anything about them after hyping you all up for it. So with that in mind, here are the 10 games that I've played over the past year or so that I really wanted to share my opinions of with you. So let's begin. This might sound weird, but I got a key for Persona 3 Portable at the beginning of this year to promote the release onto consoles and other platforms. And, you know, it's Persona 3 Portable, and given the announcement of the Persona 3 remake, it kind of takes the wind off of Persona 3 Portable in a way, because here's a prettier, more modern take on Persona 3 with brand new voice actors, a full 3D environment, but I still like a lot of the things in Persona 3 Portable, like the FemPro tag. Those social links that you only get with the FemPro tag are just really, really cool. I'm hoping that these social links that were exclusive to this character would be available for the male character in the Persona 3 remake, but if not, this is where Persona 3 Portable fits in. Even though it doesn't have the 3D environments of regular Persona 3 on the PS2, it's still a Persona game through and through with all of those mechanics and so much more. Being able to control party members is a really big deal for me, and the fact that this has that makes this fantastic. And of course, who doesn't want to burn my bread? You know, that soundtrack by Shoji Meguro, it's great, it's classic. And, you know, I didn't get too far in it. I basically got to, you know, the second set of Tartarus floors, if you will. Not literally floor 2. I'm talking about like after that big boss and then the story and then there. You get what I mean. And it still plays great after all these years. And I'm just so happy that a lot more people are able to play this game. Persona 4 Golden, which is my absolute favorite Persona game of all time. Yes, I'm sorry for the people who love Persona 2, but this one brought me back to JRPGs. And after popping it on my Steam Deck, it still felt like the same provincial town that I remember from so many years ago. And I can't believe that it's more than 10 years since this game was originally released on the PlayStation Vita, where I played it for the third time, because I did play the original. The music is fantastic. That rural vibe just gets me because it's really a huge contrast against all of the other games that RPGs are set in. Let's be quite honest. A lot of them are set in urban areas, but being able to escape in this provincial town just became so much more heart-wrenching when you had to leave it at the end of the school year. But nonetheless, I still love my experience with the game, and who knows, maybe I will do another playthrough of Persona 4 Golden and review it on the Steam Deck. Right? Right. So I did get a chance to play Redemption Reapers at launch. I actually got the PC version of the game. And, you know, I played about 3 or 4 maps, and I kind of saw what a lot of people saw, which is the actual skill tree system seems to be quite rigid because it wants to create this sort of importance to your build, but it also made the game unnecessarily difficult. Now, keep in mind that my impressions right now are from the launch of the game, and I've heard that the game has since been patched. My plan originally was to play this game on PC for a little bit and then put it on my Steam Deck so I can play it and then review it. The problem with Redemption Reapers is that it doesn't support Steam Deck, which is really baffling to me because it has a Switch version, And I did find that a lot of Steam Deck games that play video have a problem playing on the deck for some reason. Maybe it's some sort of codec type of situation. One of the games that actually had this problem was Triangle Strategy. In the title screen specifically, it just wouldn't play the video. But, you know, in Octopath Traveler 2, they fixed that problem. But needless to say, I think Redemption Reapers seemed like an interesting concept, but I thought that the first few levels were kind of unnecessarily punishing, and not in a Souls-like kind of way. It just felt like that your teammates couldn't absorb damage that much, and maybe that was by design, but it also felt as though they were trying to make this into some sort of Into the Breach situation where you really have to think about the order in which you do things, and almost treating it like a puzzle game. And I'm not quite sure that trying to blend something like Fire Emblem with a puzzle game really worked for Redemption Reapers here. But again, this is all based off of the game when it first came out, so here's hoping that Steam Deck support is going to be built in, or it's even considered, and that a lot of people are enjoying it. Park Beyond. I have been playing this game since it came out last month, and I have very mixed feelings about this game, because for one, it's taking that park management sim type gameplay and kind of literally ratcheting it up to 11. Now, what the heck does that mean? That basically means that if you're used to making just regular flat rides like Ferris wheels and such, think of theme park rides that are impossible to do in real life. So like, for example, you can make a roller coaster that has a cannon built in, so it shoots it across an expanse and serve as a launcher. That is freaking cool. And I felt like this game had so many cool ideas that it made up for the fact that it didn't have a lot to offer in terms of coaster variety. And I think the thing that dampened my excitement of it was all of the bugs. This game is buggy. Even as I speak right now, they are still patching the game. They're trying to fix everything. And when it launched, it crashed a lot. But now it's stable. It's more stable than it was before. There's still some really weird bugs here and there that are quite minor, like flickering walkways that just looks weird in a park sim. But there's no denying that there is a charm to Park Beyond that keeps making me come back to it. And I actually have a PC version of the game. I was playing it on PS5, and I want to see if that version is better than the console version. But until then, I have a progression on the PS5 version, and I will keep trying. Soulvars is a very interesting game because I actually played this during the Steam Next Fest, but didn't get a time really to be able to release a video on it, particularly because it was very gameplay focused and very presentation focused. It's got this really cool 8-bit pixel aesthetic. I wouldn't say 8-bit really, it's more like maybe bordering between 8 and 16-bit just because there's a lot of colors there. But the most interesting part about it is that it is a deck builder, but not in the traditional sense, because the way that cards are actually depicted is kind of like that they're weapons or special abilities. And I thought that that kind of abstraction was very interesting. But then the demo just kind of kept going and going, where there's a lot of gameplay involved, and typically I don't mind that sort of thing, but it quickly kind of overstayed its welcome really quickly. And maybe it didn't help that I learned that the game was also a mobile port, meaning like it was on mobile phones first, and then it was ported to PC and other platforms, assumably. Not that it soured my opinion on the game, but I was just kind of like, oh, okay, that explains why there's so much gameplay to this. That's kind of the focus of this game. And to me, I like RPGs with great storytelling in addition to great gameplay. So that's how this game kind of fell off the wagon for me a little bit. But I'm hoping that the full version is actually pretty good, which it is out right now. And I did get offered a key for it, but sadly, again, I didn't get around to playing it or installing it. So there's that. Last year, I got a key for Capcom Arcade's Second Stadium, and I actually had a lot to say about this game because it had a lot of my favorite games, like the 1940s series that were technically set in World War II, but you don't really know what country you're fighting because ambiguity and such. But I loved that shooter. It was just a fantastic experience throughout. I really suck at it now because my reactions are just way worse than before. In addition to so many other arcade games that I've never even heard of, I've never played before, and it was a great way to kind of learn about a history of Capcom that was just not available to me because, as you know, arcades didn't have everything, and this collection, this Second Stadium, allows you to really check out a larger part of Capcom's history beyond what you know. So this was a really great blast to the past for me, and I highly recommend checking it out. And if you can, take a look at the games list just to see if there's several games that you really like on it, because I think that's going to help you determine whether you want this or not. And for me, it has a lot of what I want. So when it came out last year, I did get a chance to play This Way Madness Lies. Now, in case you haven't heard of this game, this is developed by Zeboyd Games, who was responsible for Cosmic Star Heroine. Now, admittedly, I haven't played that game yet, but I know a lot of you really adore that game. So when I saw that Zeboyd Games reached out to me about This Way Madness Lies, I thought to myself, you know what? This might be a great introduction to the kind of games that Zeboyd Games makes. And in case you haven't heard of This Way Madness Lies, this blends magical girls with Shakespeare. And if that idea sounds crazy to you, it was to me too. What's actually really cool about this game was it did play around with the Shakespeare tropes, and you can turn on this translator that kind of translated Shakespearean text into plain English, which makes it so boring and drab that it's funny in and of itself. And that lasted for me for a couple of hours or so because it was just so fascinating to see how that sort of translation system worked. And, you know, there is some charm to the game. It is like a magical girl story where all of the characters are actually part of a drama club. And of course, they're trying to save these Shakespearean worlds. And for the most part, the gameplay is pretty serviceable. I like the streamlined progression system that they had. They actually allow you to equip specific amounts of passives or abilities and such. And I think where I fell off on it is the comedy of it. Granted, the enemies are kind of inspired by Shakespeare as well, and they're named very cheekily, but I think, like, it needed a bit more to sustain the joke, if you will, for the next few hours. And granted, this is a short game, right? But otherwise, I think there's a lot of really good ideas here that if Zeboyd Games actually wanted this to be like a much larger game, there's a lot of ideas to be mined here. And of course, as I'm making this, they just announced that it's going to be ported onto multiple platforms, so congratulations to them. While not necessarily a full game, I did play through the Lies of P demo, and from what I played, I was really entranced by its gorgeous visuals, the aesthetic, its style. It was really easy to get immersed into the gameplay. Now, it is very much like Bloodborne, to the point where you lock onto the enemy, you can't dodge roll, you actually just hop left, right, and back when you try to dodge. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think it was quite obvious that Bloodborne was a huge inspiration for this game. But one other complaint that people had about the demo is that the dodge timing seemed to be kind of rough, and thankfully, the developer has addressed that. They said that we're going to really look into it to make sure that it's a smooth experience. And if I'm being honest, it's not as hard as other Souls games. I usually use myself as a measure of how difficult Souls games are because typically I have an extremely hard time beating the first boss of these games. But when I encountered the boss, after maybe a couple or so tries here and there, I basically took it down, and quite frankly, it wasn't the boss that defeated me a lot of the time, it was just my sheer impatience. But that being said, I'm looking forward to seeing what else Lies of P can offer when it comes out in September. A game that I really wished that I was able to talk about with you on this channel is Return to Monkey Island. And I know that it's not a JRPG, but the Monkey Island series for me has had a soft spot in my heart. The Monkey Island series has been going on since the 90s. I remember playing it on the floppy disk. It had 8 floppy disks for the original Secret of Monkey Island. And they had a gag where they said to insert disc 9. And that actually caught me by surprise. And at the time, I remember playing at a PC rental store because I was renting the game. I was asking the owner, like, hey, where's disc 9? And they were like, there's no disc 9. And then I hit spacebar and it said, please insert disc 24. And then, eventually you realize that there really isn't any because it goes all the way up to like disc 197 or something. And then Guybrush says, I guess we'll have to wait till later to figure out where this stump goes. And they paid that off later. And that's the kind of comedy that the Monkey Island series has. So imagine my surprise when I played Return to Monkey Island and there's a sense of poignancy and contemplation in addition to the usual comedy that the series has been known for in Return to Monkey Island. It's a contemplation by its developers of where they've gone over the past several years beyond Monkey Island 2. By the way, this happens after Monkey Island 2. And it's so fascinating because, to me at least, it's similar to the growth of Cory Barlog when he made God of War 2018, where he's now a dad, he's now a father, he's a parent. And his situation was so much different than when he directed God of War 2 back in the PS2 days, that God of War 2018 allowed him to reflect on his time as an adult leading up to that point in time. And I felt really strongly that Return to Monkey Island was the same kind of game for Ron Gilbert and everybody who worked on this project. Now, the fact that I said that this happens after Monkey Island 2 does not actually excuse the fact that a whole bunch of other Monkey Islands happened. And the way that Return to Monkey Island deftly handles all of those different stories within itself and acknowledging their presence was something that I wanted to really rant about in a video. But of course, I didn't know if you guys were going to be interested in it, but I'm glad that I'm able to share my opinions of the game with you now, because Return to Monkey Island really made me tear up and really made me emotional. And while it's going to have a Sea of Thieves expansion, Return to Monkey Island to me was that definitive exclamation point, punctuation mark that really summarizes my feelings about Monkey Island as a whole. So if you haven't checked that out, I highly recommend it. So I've been playing Street Fighter 6 since its launch, thanks to Capcom, by the way, and I really love it. As a purist from Street Fighter 2 World Warrior, I absolutely love Street Fighter 6. Now, I've played a lot of World Tour mode, but I kind of fell off of it because, Final Fantasy 16 came out, Rain Code came out, Trails into Reverie became available to me. But when I think about my experience with the World Tour mode in Street Fighter 6, I just love how close to Yakuza it felt, oddly enough. From the actual traversal through town to the actual way that people are framed in the cutscenes when you talk to them, it was really fascinating. And out of all of the World Tour type modes that fighting games had, like, I'm lumping in Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance with that because, to be quite fair, they were the ones who actually originated this style of open world fighting game single player campaign. This is very comprehensive because you can't just remake a character. You can't just be like Chun-Li with like all the moves. You have to like mix and match different special moves to equip to your character. I think it's a great way to onboard new people to get them feel comfortable with the battle system of Street Fighter 6. And granted, we have yet to see the full potential of the Street Fighter 6 combat system in high-level play. Like, the closest we've seen so far to that was CEO a few weeks ago. But with EVO arriving very soon, and Street Fighter 6 having 7,000 participants, which is the most in series and EVO history, I can't wait to see what people actually can come up with. And in case you're wondering, my main is Marissa, and I absolutely love her to death. She has the best moves, she's a powerhouse, she's a brawler. It's perfect for me, especially since I'm not as fast as I was back in the day. So aside from these 10 games, I actually talked about my favorite games of the past year, from June 1st to June 1st. And if you want to check those out, please click on the video up top. And I want to hear what other games you've been playing. Post your thoughts in the comments below and let's talk about it. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.